Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Steam is doing an amazing spring sale where there are a bunch of games that have really cool deals, so it's a great time for you to pick up a new title. They're going to be running this up through March 20th. And I dropped a video on this a couple of days ago, and I planned to move on, but then I got a comment with some feedback, basically saying, hey, I've already played all of these games. Could you do a video that focuses more on indie or titles that are just in general not as well known? And you know, when I look back at my video, I realized a lot of the games that I talked about were exactly the same games that I talked about for the Steam Winter Sale, which kind of irritated me. I was like, you know what? This is legitimate feedback. I probably should have switched it up a little bit. So I decided to go ahead and circle the block. This video is going to specifically focus on indie titles. It's not necessarily ones you haven't heard of before, especially if you're on this channel, but I think I've given a wide enough variety that you'll hear of at least one or two titles that you either haven't heard of before or you haven't thought of in quite some time, and maybe now is a great time for you to go ahead and pick them up. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first indie titles I want to cover are ones that actually have sequels coming out this year. And let's go ahead and start with Hades. Just an amazing title all the way around. You play as the son of Hades, and you are desperately trying to escape your father's realm, which is going to cause you to get into conflicts with multiple different denizens of Greek mythology. Now, this is a roguelike game, and so it's expected you're going to die repeatedly trying to leave Hades, but then you're going to come back, and when you come back, these different bosses that you faced will remember that they faced you before, and so this will trigger new conversations. Sometimes it could even trigger new mechanics, and there are deities you can meet while you're running around who will give you different mechanics and powers that you can use. There's no control over what powers you receive. So you can do a run through the exact same area 5 different times, but experience new conversations and completely new powers every single time. It's just absolutely fantastic. And as you could probably tell from the footage, combat is very challenging. The art is amazing, especially some of the takes that they have on how to present the different deities. It's really cool. This game has a sequel coming out based upon this character's sister, and she's actually trying to face Kronos, so should give us some different characters that we can run into as well. Hades is 60% off for $9.99. Next up is Hollow Knight. I've actually never played this game before. I'm not really into Metroidvania games for the most part, but so many people absolutely love this title. You play as an insect warrior called Knight, and you're going to be exploring a fallen kingdom that's been plagued by supernatural forces. There are a lot of different lore tidbits that you can pick up throughout the playthrough that really expand on the world building, make this area seem alive even though it's been completely destroyed. The 2D art is absolutely phenomenal. There are very challenging fights and levels, very memorable experiences. There's a sequel that's supposed to be coming out, I believe this year, called Hollow Knight Silk Song. It's supposed to be double the size of the original, and it's going to allow you to have side quests, which I guess wasn't a thing in Hollow Knight. This game is 50% off for $7.49. Next up is Subnautica, possibly the most popular survival game of all time. You have crash landed on an alien planet, and you're trying to find a way to survive while studying local creatures and fauna, and also trying to figure out a way off the planet. The art here is amazing. It truly feels like an underwater game. You never know what you're going to run into. I actually played a few hours of this back when I used to do Facebook gaming, believe it or not. And so I have some experience with it, but I'm not really into survival games, so I didn't complete it. But no question, this is amazing. The sequel is going to allow you to have co-op, and it'll let the player change their DNA so they can get unique powers, something that was not available to you in the original game. Subnautica is 50% off for $14.99. Disco Elysium, the final cut, is, in my opinion, the best written CRPG of all time. You truly feel like someone who's completely a psycho, completely lost your mind, and you can either slowly try to pull it back together, or you can lean in to being someone who just absolutely has a shattered psyche. The conversations that you enter into oftentimes have you talking to yourself as different parts of your mind chime in for different situations, whether that be your ability to conceptualize things, your pride in being a cop, your in tuneness with all things that are supernatural. There's just a whole bunch of different voices that you have inside your head that might chime in at any given period. It's so much fun, so super cool. You really feel like a detective also, so it's very interesting trying to piece together the different mysteries and figure out what's going on. The bromance in this game is amazing. You got a partner named Kim who is just written so phenomenally well. Unfortunately, the developer who created this ZOM kind of crashed and burned, and it ended up splitting into 3 different factions, if you will, that are all working on their own separate games that are supposed to be similar to Disco Elysium. One of them is called Hope Town, and I believe the Kickstarter for that is going to start on Monday. So I'll probably end up releasing a video about that game then. But there's a couple of other groups that have started up as well that I believe should be releasing more information about their game soon. We'll see. So not direct sequels, but definitely games that have been heavily inspired by Disco Elysium's system. So we'll see whether or not they turn out any good. Disco Elysium, the final cut, is available for 75% off at $9.99. And then last on the list is Sovereign Syndicate. And this game has you playing as either a human or dwarf or a minotaur, which is super cool. All of them in their own way are trying to solve a series of murders that have been happening in town. And what I really love about this game is, first and foremost, you might have already been able to tell, it's very similar to Disco Elysium as far as style and even some of its mechanics, but it does just enough to set itself apart and feel like wholly its own game. It's a very unique setting with lots of interesting creatures for you to interact with, such as centaurs or cyclopses. There's fantastic writing throughout this game, really cool characters that you enjoy interacting with. The art is very unique as well. They use tarot cards for both skills and combat, and combat is displayed to the player via comic book panels. It's all just really slick, feels really unique. This game isn't getting a sequel just yet, but what it is getting, very similar to Disco Elysium once again, is a final cut. And this final cut version is going to have full voice acting, something the original game did not have. Very exciting. Really looking forward to how much the game changes with some of the additions that they have planned. And it might be worth it now to just go ahead and buy the game on discount, because I believe this final cut, similar to Disco Elysium once again, is going to be a free upgrade. It's not going to be a new version of the game that you have to buy again. So you could go ahead and buy it now and then just put it on ice, wait for that final cut update, and then go ahead and dive into it. Sovereign Syndicate is available for 50% off at $9.99. Okay, now let's move into some games that you are probably familiar with if you've been paying attention to the channel, but I'll still go ahead and take the opportunity to tell you about them here. Broken Roads was developed by developer Drop Bear Bytes, and it's got a fascinating moral compass where you can choose to be some combination of humanist or Machiavellian or nihilist, and it gives you just a really unique mix as far as representing where your character stands that I thought was super cool and would love to see the game flesh out a little bit more. That system convinced me to live stream the game when it first came out, and I actually had a ton of fun. I thought the game was very well written. Unfortunately, it had a rough launch because there were definitely a lot of bugs with the game. Combat was boring, and while the writing had been done well, the main story really needed to be more fleshed out to pull the player a little bit more through the adventure. Drop Bear Bytes didn't let the launch stop them though. They decided to just go ahead and buckle down, and they have been releasing multiple patches to really reform multiple aspects of the game. And by this time, it's a very different experience than it was at launch, and they plan to drop even more patches in the future that are doing a lot to revamp the writing, revamp some of the combat systems, and make the game overall just a lot cleaner and snappier than what people experienced before. I definitely plan to circle back and check out Broken Roads sometime this year. You can do that for 50% off at $17.49. Next up is King Arthur Knight's Tale, and you all know this game dominated my channel for a good stretch of time. You play as Sir Mordred from King Arthur fame, and the game is set in Avalon, which is basically like purgatory for Arthurian legend, and all the original characters of the legend exist, and all of them have a pretty solidified idea of what kind of person Sir Mordred is. So some of them will see you as a tyrant and someone who's an enemy, and there are others who will see you as a kindred spirit. It's up to you to either play into the way Sir Mordred is presented in the original legend and be someone who's more evil, who's more tyrannical, or you could go completely the other route and actually be a much more righteous person. Regardless of which way you go, there are just a slew of incredibly written characters that you can interact with, all of them from Arthurian legend. So it makes the game really cool. Picking up a new party member is so much fun, and the mechanics in this game are a blast because no two characters are exactly the same. You could have two characters who are both champions, but one of them might have a unique mechanic that's not available to anybody else, or they're going to have the same talents, but it's going to be a completely different mix. Well, maybe they get these talents at a different time, or they unlock different aspects of those talents that other players are not able to do. And so there's simply not one character who doesn't have something that's cool about them, but you can only take 3 with you at one time. So it's always a lot of fun putting these different teams together, and that's important because combat is absolutely punishing. You really have to use all your resources in order to be able to survive. So King Arthur is a game that easily holds your attention. Neocore Games did a standalone expansion called Legion 9, which was also fantastic. It doesn't use the Arthurian legend as much, but it leans more into a Spartan aesthetic. So I'd argue the character models are actually a lot more fun to look at, and it was once again an absolute blast with a bunch of new powers and abilities for you to use. Neocore Games is actually working on a completely brand new IP. They announced that about a month ago, so I can't wait to find out what it is that they're working on. King Arthur Knight's Tale is available for 70% off at $13.49. Next up is Colony Ship, and this comes from the same developers of Age of Decadence. It puts you in a situation where you're locked inside a spaceship and it will not reach its destination in your lifetime. And this has caused a lot of people who are on the ship to basically lose hope. And instead of feeling like they're all united in the cause to reach this particular area and restart up humanity, they've started fighting amongst each other and have separated the ship into different forms of territory. This game has absolutely incredible writing that really pulls you into the world, and it has really cool quest design where you never quite know what it is you're going to do. From my personal gaming experience, Colony Ship has the best pacifist run in gaming. It's one where it's not enough to just not kill anybody. You also sometimes have to make decisions that are gonna turn your stomach, that are going to be considered cowardly. You have to do some things that really might not agree with the player just for the cause of, hey, I'm not going to harm anybody during this playthrough. I think that's super cool, and I really enjoyed my time with this game. It absolutely needs a sequel where the ship reaches its destination, and so I hope one day we get that. Colony Ship, a post-Earth role-playing game, is available at 40% off for $23.89. Next up is the Thaumaturge. Imagine a game where it's basically Constantine and the Witcher series combined. That's what this is, and it's just absolutely as fantastic as what you would imagine. You play as a detective who's investigating his father's death in old school Warsaw. Now, when I say you're a detective, you're not just investigating regular crimes. You can actually see demons and capture them. And when you capture these demons, it opens up new mechanics and options for you in combat. And consequently, combat has some really interesting mechanics and choices as far as how you build yourself up, and it just keeps pulling you along the entire experience. But on top of that, as again, you can probably already tell, there is incredible dark and moody art in this game. The art does so much to make you feel like, wow, this is a completely different place. The writing is also strong. It's also very interesting how you can change the main character. He can become a very different person based on some of the things that you do. I had a great time with the Thaumaturge. It's currently 45% off, bringing the price down to $19.24. Next up, we haven't talked about this game in a while, Black Geyser, Couriers of Darkness. This game is basically a Baldur's Gate, Pillars of Eternity type spiritual successor, an isometric, real-time with pause CRPG. And I know that's going to make many people happy. I know some of you feel like turn-based combat is just taking over everything. So it's nice to see a developer really lean into real-time with pause. These types of games are rare. And the combat mechanics are super cool as well. They do some interesting things, especially with Summoner. I played through as a Summoner in the game, and the way you could just bring in tons and tons of different critters onto the screen never stopped being super cool. And so I'm looking forward to circling back to this game at some point. Black Geyser has an interesting greed system as well, where if you steal a lot from people or you do a lot of things that would be considered greedy, it'll have a ripple effect on the overall world where people will become more lawless, vendors will trust you less, you'll be charged higher prices, and it'll just cause more and more chaos to spread. Whereas if you do the opposite, you can help to calm the world as well. I felt like they needed to lean into this more and develop it, but as a central mechanic, I thought the idea and concept was really, really cool. And so it'll be really interesting to see how they expand on that. Developer Grape Ocean Technologies is working on an expansion called Tales of the Moon. It's going to add new spells, items, main quest, and quality of life features. And part of this will be a free update to the base game as well. So I'm definitely excited for that, and I definitely plan to play it once it's available. Black Geyser, Couriers of Darkness is available at 60% off for $11.99. And then finally, I actually haven't played this title before. I cannot at all tell you whether or not it's good, but the developer reached out, gave me a key for it, and unfortunately, it's really bad timing. I got a ton of things going on, so I just don't have time to play this, even though it looks amazing. So I thought I'd go ahead and talk about it in this video. Petrified Pawns puts you in a situation where you're in control of chess pawn pieces and you're put into tactical turn-based combat situations with other chess armies. The trailer looks absolutely amazing. I love chess, and so this looks like insanity. I feel like I would have a ball with this game. Again, unfortunately, I cannot tell you if it's actually good. I've already made promises to about 2 or 3 other developers about content I would do for them over the next couple of weeks, so I just don't have time to really dive into this game. But if you end up picking it up and playing it, definitely let me know down in the comments how you felt about it and whether or not it was any good. Petrified Pawns is available for 15% off at $10.19. All right, now let me get into a couple of recent indie games that were highly acclaimed, but I still never got the chance to play. Starting with Balatro. So Balatro is a poker roguelike deck builder game, and you can add crazy elements to the different cards, such as holograms, that will enable you to pull off insane combos with your illegal poker deck. I gotta be honest with you, I don't know why people rave about this game the way that they do, but it's clear it has a very, very strong fan base, which feels like this is just one of the best games that has ever come out. So sooner or later, I do plan to play Balatro. Pretty sure it was one of the nominees last year for Game of the Year. So again, people feel very strongly about this experience. And so if you like deck builders, this might absolutely be a game you want to check out. It's currently 15% off for $12.74. Next up is Cult of the Lamb, and this allows you to literally start your own cult. The art in this game is amazing, with the cultists being adorable and hilarious characters that make it very, very entertaining to travel through this world. And even though the fight mechanics are simple, they're also very visually engaging, and so I would venture to say fighting is still fun. But overall, Cult of the Lamb is a very simple and relaxed experience. You can do chill activities with your cultists, and it's been significantly expanded upon since release. So there's a lot more to the game overall than what you might have experienced when it first came out. Cult of the Lamb has just always looked like a great time. Currently, it's 50% off for $12.49. And then finally, let's go over Blasphemous 2. This is a side-scrolling Metrovania game. And again, usually I don't play those, so I never got a chance to check this out. But you play as the penultimate one, and the game has you going through very difficult platforming and deadly traps, along with trying to overcome amazingly difficult boss fights. But what really sets this game apart is its gross and disturbing art and music. It really is unsettling for the player. So if you're looking for a Metrovania that has some strong horror elements to it and makes you feel like you're in this gritty and unmerciful world, Blasphemous 2 is definitely going to do that for you. It's also got a really nice story as well. Currently, the game is 50% off for $14.99. All right, now let's kind of reach back and go through some older indie games that have been out for 10 years or potentially even more that you may have forgotten about, never got a chance to check out, and maybe now is a good time for you to go ahead and dive in. First up is Wildermyth. So many people have told me that I should really play this game, and I might get around to it one day. It's a party-based RPG with turn-based tactical combat, and it allows you to follow people for their entire lives. So you start with them when they're just beginning their adventuring career, and they can become old, they can have children, and then the children basically take over the adventuring. It's not clear to me how the game ends, but I know it is possible for it to end. So it's not like the way I believe Crusader Kings works, where it can just go on and on forever, technically. But the decisions you make absolutely change the world. It changes your party members. You got a lot of choice, not only in regards to what kind of personality they have, but also their mechanics. And just in general, it keeps pulling you in over and over again. Apparently, this game has an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam, and so sooner or later, I think I need to go ahead and check it out. It's currently 35% off for $16.24. What Remains of Edith Finch is a narratively focused first-person exploration game where you play as a 17-year-old girl who is the last surviving member of her family. And you have to go back to the family house and uncover parts of your family's mysterious past. In the process of doing that, you're also going to relive some of the significant deaths that have occurred in your family line and basically caused its downfall. There are multiple ways in which the game conveys this information to you, and oftentimes it's not clear that what you are seeing is real. So this is a game that is considered to be true art. It's not about a bunch of combat and fighting all the time. It's really about a visual narrative experience. And so definitely, if storytelling and interesting mechanics are something that's important to you, this is a game worth checking out. It's currently 75% off for $4.99. Let's go all the way to the other end of the spectrum with Cuphead. This is a run and gun action game, and the levels you go through really try to recreate that 1930s cartoon feel with a very similar art style, watercolor backgrounds, and original jazz recordings. It's just an absolute blast front to back. Definitely something where you could just sit back and have a good time. Overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam. If you haven't experienced Cuphead yet, definitely you should check it out. It's currently 30% off for $13.99. Next up is Undertale, and this puts you in the role of a kid who has been trapped inside of a monster world. Now, the interesting thing about this game is that you don't have to kill anyone. The monsters and enemies that you face can all be pacified, appeased, or you can even flirt with them in order to bring them onto your side. And the decisions that you make can have ripple effects and create reactions later on in the game. You could basically start up relationships and friendships that would be very unexpected. This game has an incredible sense of humor. You can even tell that if you go on Steam and just read how the developer has chosen to describe it. It's just all about good conversations, good times, and good fun. Yet another game with overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam, but even more noteworthy is that there are 200,000 plus reviews on Steam of this game. So you know, if that many people have taken the time to leave a review and said, whoa, this game is amazing, you should probably go ahead and check it out. It's currently 90% off, bringing the price down to $1. Absolutely, go ahead and give it a try. Next up is Limbo, and this is a 2D side-scroller puzzle platform game, and it has you playing as a boy who's exploring the world. Now, the interesting thing about this game is its black and white aesthetic and the way that it uses sound, which really reinforces some of the horror elements that the game has, and the feeling that this boy is in terrible danger. So from a gameplay standpoint, it really pulls you in, and it's very, very interesting. Now, it does have a open-ended story that was kind of polarizing when the game came out. So if you need the story to be direct, front and center, and clear, this is probably not the game for you. But if all you care about is just great visuals and great gameplay, Limbo is an amazing experience. The developer also did another indie game called Inside, which was also very highly regarded. Limbo is 90% off for, yet again, $1. Go ahead and pick it up. And then the last game in this section is Super Meat Boy. And this puts you in the role of Meat Boy, saving his girlfriend, Bandage Girl, from his evil nemesis, Dr. Fetus. Meat Boy has a very unique art style, with him oftentimes leaving trails of meat and blood just about everywhere he jumps around. The levels are brutally punishing, where even one mistake can cause you death, which some players honestly were very annoyed about, and it caused them to quit the game after a few levels. But for those of you who love the sound of that and want something that's really, really gonna push you to the max, Meat Boy will absolutely do that. And there are 300 different levels for you to work through, so there's plenty of content in this game. It was actually created by Edmund McMillan, who went on to do The Binding of Isaac, which is another highly regarded indie game. Super Meat Boy is 75% off for $3.74. And then last but not least, let me go ahead and throw a curveball in here. We've already covered 20 indie games, and this last one isn't actually an indie game. I know, but it feels like an indie game. It looks like an indie game. It plays like an indie game. And so I feel comfortable including it in this list. Pentiment. This is Josh Sawyer's baby. Obsidian released this game, and it's just absolutely incredible on multiple levels. First and foremost, the art design, as you can already see, is so unique and so amazing. Some of the most well-animated children I've ever seen in any game, period. Just really, really cool stuff. The writing is also absolutely fantastic, with a massive focus on history. You're most likely going to learn quite a bit about history playing this game, and I enjoyed that so much during our live stream playthrough. I also love solving mysteries, and this game focuses around you being a detective and trying to figure out a couple of murders that occur during the game. So super, super cool. I personally did not enjoy the game overall, because I didn't like how the mysteries resolved, and I didn't like how my character developed from a personality standpoint over the course of the game. But there's no question, Pentiment is worth playing. Pentiment is worth playing, it's worth experiencing, and there are a lot of people who absolutely swear by this game. It is currently 50% off for $9.99. And there you go. 21 indie games that are currently on sale on Steam that you can go ahead and consider picking up. Hopefully you all enjoy this more than my first video regarding the Steam sale. Hopefully you saw some things here that you either hadn't considered picking up, hadn't even heard of before, or had heard of before but hadn't really considered playing, and now you're like, you know what, it's a great time, let me experience something completely new. If you do end up playing one of these games on the list, I would definitely love if you would comment down below and let me know. And while we're at it, let me know if there's any other content you would love to see from the channel. I appreciate all of you. Make sure you hit that like button, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.